probably anywhere from $30 to $100, depending on the facility and what's involved.
The $30 to $100 price, that's per specimen that we're talking about, right? Yeah.
We've been very good at getting heart, lung, liver, because we know that. So I'm not going to crush that part. I'm going to basically crush below, I'm going to crush above, and I'm going to see if I can get it out intact.
Welcome to a very special series of broadcasts. We're actually doing 3 specials dealing with the issue of life. And that's because, as you know, in the news right now is the fact that Planned Parenthood has not only been accused of, but has admitted to the fact that they are distributing fetal remains. We're talking about livers, kidneys. You've seen the videos. It's horrendous, disgusting practice that Planned Parenthood has engaged in, that in essence, when they terminate the life of those unborn children, they are harvesting the organs and then moving them into streams of commerce. As disgusting as that sounds, as awful as it is, right now under existing law, it's not necessarily illegal. It needs to be. We're moving on that. We've got a plan in place that we're putting legislation forward to deal with this issue. So to understand the nature of the fight that we're engaged in, you have to understand the history of what we're dealing with. And as I said, the practice of abortion is abhorrent. It's barbaric. We allow it in the United States, even in late terms. And the fact of the matter is now we know that the business of Planned Parenthood is also selling or at least getting into commerce those what they call tissue. The tissues, the liver, the kidneys, the lungs of these children that they're terminating, killing in the womb. We're going to fight back on this, but we're going to first take a look at history.
Good evening. In a landmark ruling, the Supreme Court today legalized abortions. The majority in cases from Texas and Georgia said that the decision to end a pregnancy during the first 3 months belongs to the woman and her doctor, not the government. Thus, the anti-abortion laws of 46 states were rendered unconstitutional.
If you look back now in 1973 and say, where were these organizations, like the ACLJ and others, of their generation, where were they on this issue? They didn't file briefs in the case, they didn't really respond to the case, and there was no national outcry of the case. The church was significantly asleep at the switch, but so were the American people.
The evangelical church, for the most part, was not even recognizing abortion. It wasn't on their radar screen.
It was on no one's radar screen as a significant issue. That changed when people started putting their lives in between the woman seeking the abortion and the abortionists themselves.
And so when we had rallies in the 70s, it was hysterical. You maybe had 3 people. All of them were, median age would have been somewhere about 85 years old. It wasn't until about the mid to late 70s that the evangelical church started getting on board. Francis Schaeffer started addressing issues. People like Jerry Falwell.
I had strong political differences with Jerry Falwell, who, in spite of our differences, would have called me his friend and vice versa. We didn't agree on many political issues, but I gotta say this. When this man took a pro-life position, he took a pro-life position. All you had to do was call his office and say, I have a woman here, she's pregnant, she doesn't have the money, she doesn't have the means, can you help her? He would provide a total support system.
Jerry Falwell gets, portrayed as this guy up in Lynchburg, Virginia that who's paying attention to, and the fact was he was talking to millions of people every week on his radio and television broadcasts.
I think the church, all across the political spectrum, has to perhaps imitate the likes of Jerry Falwell. Not just talk the talk of being pro-life, but walk the walk.
But perhaps the crystallizing impact of evangelicals becoming more aware of abortion was the election of Ronald Reagan.
Ronald Reagan took the moral issue of abortion from the religious moral realm and put it into the political realm because he felt like the Roe versus Wade decision was wrong and he wanted to do something for the pro-life movement, and he did.
More than a decade ago, a Supreme Court decision literally wiped off the books of 50 states statutes protecting the rights of unborn children. Abortion on demand now takes the lives of up to 1.5 million unborn children a year. Human life legislation ending this tragedy will someday pass the Congress, and you and I must never rest until it does.
The politics always it's a mixed bag politically, but Ronald Reagan clearly was trying to do everything he could do to bring the pro-life movement into the political realm.
But the issue was that in the mid-'80s, we were starting to look for ways to really engage the church in practical ways to get involved. Well, that leads us to Randall Terry, the beginnings of Operation Rescue.
The abolitionists in the 1830s and 40s and 50s used to take black slaves that they had freed and bring them throughout the North so that people could see the scars on their back, the teeth knocked out, so that politicians that supported slavery would be ashamed and embarrassed, and so that people would rise up against it. We are in that tradition showing this baby.
Randall introduced two things. One, that if you had 2 at a clinic, suppose you had 200 kneel in prayer at a clinic. Then he introduced the concept of repentance and our responsibility.
Christians are waking up and saying, well, if they can be brutalized by police, if they can be dragged into federal court on trumped-up charges, then it's only a matter of time till it could happen to us. So many Christians are joining the fray out of a healthy self-interest, an interest for their children, for their children's children. It's time that the body of Christ really looked itself in the mirror, in the face of the mirror, and said, what do we want to leave our children?
We have a moral obligation to rescue babies from murder. As Americans, we're blessed with many choices, but the right to kill our offspring and murder our children is not one of them.
The moral obligation is absolutely clear. We must protect unborn children. It's an issue of life and death. But we also need to stop giving our federal dollars to Planned Parenthood. And I say that especially in light of the new evidence that has come out, where Planned Parenthood is harvesting organs of the children they're terminating in the womb and getting those organs to organizations that sell them. It's selling body parts. We've got to stop it. The federal government needs to stop it. We've got a petition up at aclj.org. It is very clear. If there was ever a time to defund Planned Parenthood, this is that time. I'm going to encourage you to go to aclj.org and sign that petition. You could also call us at 1-877-989-2255. That's aclj.org or 1-877-989-2255 to defund Planned Parenthood.
You already know that the nation's largest abortion provider, Planned Parenthood, received $1.5 billion in taxpayer dollars in the last 3 years alone. That money frees up other funds so Planned Parenthood can perform hundreds of thousands of abortions. Now, a startling and gruesome revelation. Planned Parenthood is now harvesting body parts from butchered babies. A senior Planned Parenthood abortionist has been caught on camera detailing how they crush the baby, altering the abortion procedure so they are, quote, very good at getting heart, lung, liver. Then they sell the baby's organs. It's time to stop this abhorrent practice. Stand with the American Center for Law and Justice and demand that Congress defund Planned Parenthood. No more taxpayer dollars for this abortion giant. Call now, 1-877-989-2255. That's 1-877-989-2255. Or add your name online, aclj.org.
What you're about to see is a real story. This is exactly what happens, and this is how we've caught groups like Planned Parenthood with their disregard for human life. Disregard that, by the way, I have argued multiple cases at the Supreme Court on the life issue. You will see you hear the passion in our voice, you see it on the screen. But let me take you back to Buffalo, New York, for an unbelievable situation, the callous indifference to human life. Take a look.
My brother was the pastor of one of the leading churches in our community. I was a minister on the staff of that church. Members of our church had moved into a new house where next door they thought was a medical facility, but she would do the dishes at night and watch out the kitchen window and see the staff of this medical facility coming out into the parking lot and holding up what appeared to be some kind of trash bags And she was there in the house, rocking her little baby in the front window, when she noticed him hold these bags up to the sky. It was a sunny day like today. And they appeared to have liquid and matter in them. And he poked them a little bit, and then he walked back here to the dumpster, and he opened it and threw them in. And then he jumped in his silver Peugeot and he drove away.
Well, that made this woman very suspicious. She thought somebody's breaking the health codes. You can't throw medical waste into an open garbage dumpster. They had small children. She was concerned about their safety. So her husband, who happened to be an inspector for the IRS, came home and she asked him, please investigate and find out what these people are doing. Well, he retrieved one of those bags, and in that bag were the remains of 9 aborted babies.
And that was the first time that I saw the primary victim of abortion.
They brought the bag to my brother, their pastor's office, laid it on his desk, and said, look inside. And my brother looked inside the bag, and he said every human instinct inside him wanted to put these babies back together again.
They were little babies, fit in the palm of your hand, but they were little boys and girls. You could tell that. One little girl had a dimple in her cheek, but her head had been severed in half, her arms and legs torn from her, her body disemboweled.
And it was so stunning to him, he was almost in shock for a couple of days, and then decided these babies deserved the dignity of burial.
Well, we came back here a month later and we had an open casket funeral service right on this sidewalk. And about 400 people attended. This sidewalk, clear from here on up to the main street and all the way across, was filled with people. 2 chiefs of police, the town supervisor, the mayor of the town, all came and participated. We had the longest motorcade anyone could remember in the town's history.
I invite, as I say, everybody in our city. Pro-life, pro-choice, and although I am pro-life.
We buried those babies at Mount Olive Cemetery, right around the corner from my church here. And that's really how this whole story began to unravel. That was September 1987.
My brother said, you have to come with me.
Individuals that had experience with the Holocaust in their own family and understood that these were really life and death issues, there's, I think, a special burden put on those of us that carry that. And the Shanks had that burden, as I do.
I am Jewish by birth, Christian by faith. And my father made sure that all of his 4 children were fully educated in the Holocaust, what the Nazis did to the Jews in Germany. And I recall sitting on his lap and looking at these ghoulish photos of mass graves with women, children, and men in those graves. And the visual imagery of abortion brought all that into reality.
Pat Mahoney is the perfect example of the classic social liberal, except on the issue of abortion. Pat was an activist. He was an activist. He marched for the civil rights movement. So this was a natural outgrowth for him.
It was as simple as loving your neighbor as yourself. I never really considered myself a pro-life leader or a pro-life ministry. I always looked at this as quite simply following the teachings of Scripture. And when Jesus identified our neighbor, he didn't base it on geography, but he based it on need. The Good Samaritan, the person who was most in need. So I think any objective look at our culture and society, the person most in need in our society and culture today are these innocent children and these women who are facing these challenging pregnancies.
He was the one that the pro-abortion groups could at least say was a decent guy.
My political leanings, I'd like to think, are consistent, but they're perhaps a bit eclectic with many faith groups. I'm not a conservative, I'm a Democrat, I'm a pacifist, I'm opposed to war, opposed to the death penalty. So in the late 70s, mostly Catholic peace groups started employing peaceful civil disobedience.
The abortion clinic has become the altar of convenience, the altar of comfort, of self-will, of promoting selfish desires above the will of God. So America, I want to plead with you and implore you, look what's happening in New York, and it can happen next in Topeka, Indianapolis, Virginia Beach. the heartland of America 5 to 7 years down the road.
He was very useful in that regard for a movement, and as a lawyer he was useful as a witness because he presented a good, strong civil rights background to this issue, which was very helpful.
For me, there was no one sort of epiphany, there was no personal experience, there was no life-changing event. It was just a simple looking at Scripture, loving my neighbor as myself. Who is my neighbor and how do I love them?
The abortion battles of the late 80s, early 1990s, when it seemed like these tectonic plates in our culture were pressing against one another. You had two distinct worldviews.
We must work to make child killing illegal, unthinkable in this country. In the meantime, we also must go right down to these very fortresses of hell where babies are being killed and do all that we can to save those children from death. We must provide options for mothers who are in a crisis pregnancy centers, maternity care, adoption, whatever. Our stance against child killing and our work to overthrow legalized child killing in this country must be comprehensive.
Here's what happened. The pro-choice movement was humming along. No real opposition per se on a grassroots level, no threat. And then suddenly, hundreds of people are coming into the streets, kneeling at clinics. And they completely freaked out.
I've often said prayer is our most powerful tool. The prayer vigils that have taken place and do take place in front of these abortion clinics have really changed this debate. We are winning this because it's a human rights issue. But you've got Planned Parenthood right now on the march in Washington, D.C. They know they're under the spotlight. They know they're under the congressional oversight now because everyone knows that they have admitted that they are basically putting into commerce human organs from the children they're aborting. Hearts, lungs, livers, kidneys. They crush the head of the child and harvest the organs. And how is that legal? We want to close that loophole down and we want to defund Planned Parenthood right now. You go to aclj.org or 1-877-989-2255. This is a brand new petition. You urge Congress to take immediate action. No excuse for Planned Parenthood's actions here. This was their head of their medical director that was talking about how they distribute these body parts, these human organs. aclj.org or 877-989-2255. We have a lot more ahead.
You already know that the nation's largest abortion provider, Planned Parenthood, received $1.5 billion in taxpayer dollars in the last 3 years alone. That money frees up other funds so Planned Parenthood can perform hundreds of thousands of abortions. Now, a startling and gruesome revelation. Planned Parenthood is now harvesting body parts from butchered babies. A senior Planned Parenthood abortionist has been caught on camera detailing how they crush the baby, altering the abortion procedure so they are, quote, very good at getting heart, lung, liver. Then they sell the baby's organs. It's time to stop this abhorrent practice. Stand with the American Center for Law and Justice and demand that Congress defund Planned Parenthood. No more taxpayer dollars for this abortion giant. Call now, 1-877-989-2255. That's 1-877-989-2255. Or add your name online, aclj.org.
Welcome back to the broadcast, everyone. Let me take you back to Atlanta, Georgia, where years ago, over 2 decades ago, I had a case that ultimately ended up at the Supreme Court of Georgia, ended up at the Supreme Court of the United States, involving prayer vigils on a sidewalk and an encounter with the police. An encounter, by the way, we ultimately prevailed on.
Well, it was interesting because the injunction was issued against Operation Rescue and its affiliates, but it did not name any other individuals, of course. So Christians in Atlanta that wanted to engage in this, including the pastor of our church at the time, Bill Haynes, and my wife, Pam, and some friends of ours, Gina Robertson and others, went down to that very same abortion clinic and simply got on their knees and prayed on a public sidewalk. The police ultimately came, motorcycle police came up.
Miss Buchanan is you're the director, clinic manager. Okay, that's right. Who is this? What's your name now?
I'm Rita Barnes, and I'm community relations.
How many abortions take place here?
What, you mean by week or by
Yeah,
year?
or whatever.
Usually it's measured by year. About 4,000? 3 to 4,000.
We do
Which is a
70 to 80 a week, something like that. 70 to 80 abortions a year.
We also
see about 200 women a week in this clinic.
And they were threatened with arrest.
If they threaten them with arrest, we'll run it to federal court today. If they don't threaten with arrest, I may run it to state court if they cite them for contempt. We'll be running it to some courts. Is it your position, officer? Is it your position, officer, that these people are violating the injunction issued on March 29, 1990? That's correct. And your name, officer?
Sergeant James Sergeant.
Sergeant. And your name, officer? Are you instructing these people to leave, officer?
What I'm instructing them is they're in violation of this court order.
Okay.
Which says they cannot demonstrate within 50 feet. I'm serving you with a copy of said order. I'd like your name, please, if I might.
My name is Jay Sekulow. I'm the attorney. I represent all of these people right here.
J-A-Y.
S-E-K-U-L-O-W is the last name. The first name is J-A-Y.
We're slow.
I know that. And what are you telling me about this order?
I'm advising that these persons are in violation of this order that was issued.
Okay, I understand. My understanding is this injunction is only against Operation Rescue, the named defendants, and those in active concert with them. Do you have any evidence that these people are in active concert with Operation Rescue?
I'm basing my opinion on paragraph 1. I'm not the city attorney.
So your position is that no person includes all people? That's correct. Okay, that's your position. So I understand that you've given me the injunction. I have a copy of it.
Yes, thank you.
Give them what is me.
I can have your name,
Don't
please.
watch yourself a lawsuit.
Steve Britt.
B-R-I-T-T.
B-R-I-T-T.
You're the city attorney, not us.
Are you arresting these people, by the way?
No, I'm not arresting.
Okay, then why do you need their names?
The police officers required them to give them ID and name verification, and I instructed our clients, which included, as I said, our pastor and my wife, to not do that.
On the First Amendment to the United States Constitution, they're entitled to anonymity unless you have grounds for probable cause to see that you're going to arrest them. Do you have any grounds for that, officer, Sergeant?
This contain also, you said you were familiar with all paragraphs of the document. I believe you read to find this there, sir.
Yeah, what paragraph?
You'll read the document.
I'm very familiar with this, doctor. Don't give him your name.
Have your name, please. Okay, that's fine.
Thank you. Next. Don't give me your name.
Have your name, please. Advise all you in violation of said injunction. Familiar with the contents of said document, which advise you're in violation of said order.
You all go ahead and pray.
Yes.
Yes, that's correct. Just go ahead and pray. I cited all of them with the order. I've instructed the clients not to give their name.
Exactly.
Well, that's what I understand. You said that the city attorney
I
said.
have nothing further to say to you.
Okay, Sergeant, thank you.
I would ask that you cease and desist, please.
The city attorney is not here.
Sir, are you with these folks?
Are you alleging that we're with Operation Rescue? I'm trying to understand the court order.
What I'm telling you, sir, is according to this order, I've been instructed that any person fall under paragraph number 1 would not be allowed to interfere with this place of business. But as I'm not an attorney, I'm not versed in nuances of all the phases of the law, then I can't give that information.
And how are we interfering? We're here praying. I'm not sure.
As I said, you have a copy of the legal document. I'm instructed to do as I'm doing. So now I'm not an attorney.
I would like to know that, Sergeant.
Saying anything further, you okay?
Okay, that's fine.
Get everybody acquainted.
Sir?
Sir.
We're not trying to demonstrate or picket, or we're here praying.
As I try to explain to your attorney, I'm not a lawyer. He is.
I don't know what you're going to do with it. You've handed the injunction. Now we'll just find out what you're going to do with it.
Okay. Not doing anything unless you violate the law. If you violate, we put you in jail.
Oh, I know. Y'all have been doing that. 24 of them for praying on a public sidewalk, and all of them have been dismissed.
Okay, plain and simple. So violate the law, you go to jail.
But I understand. Well, let me ask you something, officer. These people have the right to know if they're violating the laws.
Am I violating the law by
If they're praying on this sidewalk doing what they've been doing this morning, is it your opinion, will you arrest them for doing that?
I'm sure that you're well aware, so long as these people are not interfering with the operation of the clinic.
Yes.
So long as they're not interfering with pedestrian and vehicular traffic.
Right.
And it's so long as they within reason cooperate with law enforcement officers as far as getting ingress and egress, then
We have no problem.
Right. I think
Y'all keep praying.
I think the injunction is clear, and it's that we're all guaranteed our equal rights of protection of it.
So what's the injunction?
Thank you.
Just so we'll know that Operation Rescue's been served an injunction? Is that what
Yes, and that you're in it, that all of you are presently by authority of this document in violation of said document. That's not a decision. That's a decision for the judge to make, not me. The judge issued the order. I didn't.
So we don't feel the need to ask the judge, so we're okay to stand. I mean,
your attorney, you better advise than I can.
But I'm not.
As long as people conduct themselves lawfully, then there's no reason.
Well, I think it would be safe to say that certain organizations representing an abortion clinic would say we are, or the people who are praying are violating the law. So,
Well, that's not for the people that represent the clinic. That's for these sergeants.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
It's like the court is for the judge to say what the court order means, not for me to say what the judge intended when he wrote the order.
We wanted to challenge the injunction against people that were not necessarily Operation Rescue. But what happened was the police, knowing that our clients were in their First Amendment rights, decided they would not enforce that injunction against them. So that was the beginning of a much more widespread act of civil disobedience.
Well, that's going to do it for the broadcast today, but I want to recap here. We're giving you the history of the pro-life movement, but we're also telling you what the fight is right now today. And that is Planned Parenthood was caught. We know that they are the largest provider of abortions in the world. We know that they take the unborn child's life. We know that they crush the skull of the child. We know that they'll basically institute poison into the womb to destroy the child. But now we know that they're harvesting the organs of that child and putting that child's organs on the marketplace. It's got to stop. It's abhorrent. It's disgusting. And we're paying for it. It's time for it to be over. This is the moment to defund Planned Parenthood. I'm going to urge you right now to call us at 877-989-2255 or go to aclj.org and sign that petition. This is the moment of truth. aclj.org or 1-877-989-2255. It's very simple. Not a dollar of our money goes to Planned Parenthood. aclj.org or 1-877-989-2255.
You already know that the nation's largest abortion provider, Planned Parenthood, received $1.5 billion in taxpayer dollars in the last 3 years alone. That money frees up other funds so Planned Parenthood can perform hundreds of thousands of abortions. Now, a startling and gruesome revelation. Planned Parenthood is now harvesting body parts from butchered babies. A senior Planned Parenthood abortionist has been caught on camera detailing how they crush the baby, altering the abortion procedure so they are, quote, very good at getting heart, lung, liver. Then they sell the baby's organs. It's time to stop this abhorrent practice. Stand with the American Center for Law and Justice and demand that Congress defund Planned Parenthood. No more taxpayer dollars for this abortion giant. Call now, 1-877-989-2255. That's 1-877-989-2255. Or add your name online, aclj.org.